do people find a functional medicine doctor?
Good question. We need more of them. But I think part of the reason I co-founded Function was that there aren't enough. There's, thousands. There should be hundreds of thousands of practitioners so that millions and millions of people can access this. But before I die, I didn't want to die not having functional medicine being accessible to everybody or having their own health data being available to everybody. And so it's a way of leapfrogging over a period where we don't have the infrastructure yet. And we will. I promise you, we will. Megyn, have the future of medicine come to pass as the way it should be, just as we now don't any longer do blood leeches or have, although we do for some wound healing, or we don't have drill holes in people's skulls to let out the bad evil humors. I mean, we advance in medicine. And I think, this new generation of network systems medicine is going to, this scientific paradigm is going to come to pass.
This makes it exciting, I think, to go to med school in today's day. It's
sure.
This is a way of truly healing people and helping people get better, as opposed to just, you're going in, you're going to be governed by the insurance companies. You've been upper limited on how much you can make and how much you can help.
Yeah. And doctors need to learn about, food is the biggest cause of disease and the biggest cure. And doctors learn nothing about it. And in Texas, nothing. In Texas, I was testifying in front of the Health and Human Services Committee about a bill that was to actually start to educate doctors about nutrition and to mandate it in medical schools and in graduate medical education and residencies. I'm so excited about that because that'll be a domino effect. Once state starts to do it, it'll sort of be a trend. And then we can actually start to train the new generation of doctors that is in the right paradigm. And
nurses too. I mean, nurses can do this. There's so many people who can do this who, short of getting an MD, which would be more accessible and more affordable for a lot of people too. So you've mentioned it several times, the keto diet. I've had it mentioned to me many times. I don't understand it still. No, I think I've looked it up and it says it's more like fat.
Well, it's pretty easy to understand. So your body is like a hybrid car. You can run on electric or on gas. Gas is dirty burning, electric's clean burning. Gas is carbohydrates. So your body runs very well on carbohydrates, but there's a lot of downstream consequences of having a high starch carbohydrate diet. For certain conditions, and this was first discovered in medicine with epilepsy, we found that if you took away all the sugar and starch and you increased fat to 75%, you could actually stop seizures that no medications would touch. If you look back at the history of medicine and diabetes, treatment of type 1 diabetes, where your pancreas just shuts down, all these kids would die. And the way they would treat them would be putting them on a 75% fat diet. Jocelyn.
Saturated or unsaturated?
Everything. Lard, butter, everything. Wow. And I mean, by the way, Megyn, 25% of breast milk is saturated fat.
Yeah.
So
it's gotten a bad rap.
It's gotten a bad rap. I mean, we can go into that too if you want. But what was fascinating back in the teens and 20s was there was medicine was actually prescribing ketogenic diets for type 1 diabetics to save their lives. And now we see that we can actually reverse what is predominantly a carbohydrate intolerant society, where we have 75% overweight, 93% metabolically broken, meaning they have some problem with regulating blood sugar and insulin. 93% of us, that means 6% of us aren't. Probably you and me are part of that 6%, wow. But it's not a lot of people. And when you restrict carbohydrates and you increase fat, you actually switch basically from a gas burning car to a electric burning car, and it's clean burning. But now we're finding it's effective for reversing type 2 diabetes, for treatment of Alzheimer's, for cancer. Siddhartha Mukherjee, you may have heard of him. He's a famous oncologist from Colombia, written a book called The Emperor of All Maladies, won the Pulitzer Prize. He's now doing research on ketogenic diets for end-stage cancer like melanoma and pancreatic cancer and seeing complete reversals.
What?
Because basically cancer runs on sugar, but it's not like a hybrid engine. It can only run on carbs. It can't run on fat. Mm-hmm. So you starve it of this carbs and cancer cells die. It's pretty remarkable. So across the spectrum, whether it's autism or Alzheimer's or cancer or type 2 diabetes or schizophrenia or depression or bipolar disease.
How does this jibe with the old eat food, mostly plants?
Not too much.
Not too much.
Yeah. I think you can do it on a plant-rich diet, and you can do it in a way that doesn't include a lot of junk. And so
just put a lot of olive oil over your
avocados,
salads.
Nuts and seeds, and even people do well. I mean, I think you have to understand that there's certain people who do better or do worse depending on their genetics. And so I had a patient who was overweight, who was struggling with lots of inflammation, who was pre-diabetic, whose cholesterol was like 300, it should be 200. Her triglycerides were 300, should be 100 or less. good cholesterol, we don't really like to call it good or bad, but the HDL was low, which is a sign of this metabolic dysfunction. And she was desperate to try to do something. This is the pre-Ozempic era.
Right.
I said, listen, why don't you try a ketogenic diet, see what happens, and let's follow your numbers and see how you do. Everything corrected. Her cholesterol dropped 100 points. Her triglycerides dropped 200 points. Her HDL went up 30 points. She lost, 25 pounds, and she felt great. And her prediabetes went away. So depending on the person, it can be a very effective tool, but it's not like a one-size-fits-all.
Why? Is that much fat bad for like somebody who has heart disease in the family or something?
There may be, but there's actually a paper coming out soon which looks at what we call lean mass hyperresponders. So there are certain people who, when you have a perfect sort of metabolic health, in other words, you have no prediabetes or insulin resistance and no inflammation, and you're a fit athlete and you have basically a lot of lean mass and not a lot of fat on your body, when they consume high saturated fat or ketogenic diets, they'll have a really dramatic increase in their LDL cholesterol. Now, this is something that doctors have been trained is bad, and that you immediately have a knee-jerk reaction to prescribe a statin drug, which is the number one class of drugs sold in the world. Now, some of these people have LDLs not under 70, which cardiologists would like, or even under 100, which is their lab reference range, but they have LDLs of 200, 300, 400, 500, 700, and they have no heart disease through imaging tests.
Right, because like the calcium score.
Okay. And so this is like a revolutionary new bit of data that's now emerging from the scientific literature. Like, what is going on here? How does this work? Well, when you don't eat sugar, you have to transport energy around the body. And how do you do it? Through fat, right? And what is the biggest fat carrier? It's your lipoproteins, which are fat and water don't mix, right? So you can't just put fat in your blood. You have to connect it to proteins. So what is LDL? It means low density lipoprotein. It's a lipo means fat, protein. So you put fat and protein together, it can be transported through your body for energy and other sources. So it's fascinating. The science is constantly evolving. And I think for certain people, ketogenic diets can be life-changing. Like life-changing. I've treated schizophrenia with it, treated Alzheimer's with it, autism with it, depression with it, obviously type 2 diabetes with it. And you can reverse up to 60 to 70% of type 2 diabetes that's very advanced where people are on insulin. When I was in medical school, chronic diseases were chronic. They never went away. To reverse heart failure, to reverse diabetes, to reverse kidney issues, to reverse hypertension, these things don't happen in traditional medicine.
What about the thought of mixing the keto diet with Mediterranean? Because that's the other one that everybody loves, Mediterranean.
Yeah. Well, you can eat a Mediterranean diet, but that's not necessarily a ketogenic diet. Ketogenic is a very specific thing that happens in your body.
Do you go on keto like forever?
Some people
eat keto
do.
now.
Some people do, and they thrive on it. Other people don't do well on it. So I think it's very individual.
Like try it for a month and get your inflammation.
You need about usually 6 weeks to adapt, to become fat adapted, to your metabolism shifts over, and then you can see where you're at and then check your numbers. But there's a company called Virta Health that's reversing type 2 diabetes with an online program of ketogenic diets, and not only have they seen 60% reversal, not only they've seen 12% weight loss, which is massive. It's as good as any of these drugs that are out there now. That actually they've done a parallel study like comparing just their program to Ozempic and those drugs, and they were equally effective in the outcome. So it's not something magic about Ozempic; it's the weight loss, and it's the change in metabolic health. And so you can do it through various ways, whether it's a drug or whether it's a ketogenic diet. And they found their lipid biomarkers, over 20 different cholesterol and heart disease risk factors, all got better by eating a super high fat diet. Right. So
and again, so you're saying, but also saturated fat. So that would be like red meat, like the fat that you get. I'm trying to think what's good for you saturated fat. I know bad for you saturated fat is in the ultra processed foods.
Well, trans fat is basically the worst.
That's the worst you can do.
And that's basically vegetable oil shortening. And they call it shortening because it shortens your life.
You know how many things call for that, by the way? Having like a daughter who's in 8th grade, every time she has to make brownies or cookies for the school, shortening. All of it wants actual vegetable oil.
Yeah.
And like, she's like, I don't know if you can use olive oil. I'm like, you're using it.
It's olive oil cake.
It's fine, actually. It tastes a little different, I confess, for sure. But it's healthier, I think. Yeah,
you can. And so there's a tremendous amount of emerging data that saturated fats aren't the boogeymen we thought they were. It was a long history of the scientist named Ansel Keys in the 60s who basically did this study called the 7-country study, which showed that people who had higher levels of saturated fat had higher LDL and higher heart disease risk. But they left out the other 14 or 15 countries where their data didn't match that, like Switzerland or France right. So they were like kind of was cherry picking a little bit. And then we got into this era of low fat. And that led to the food pyramid, which told us to eat 6 to 11 servings of bread, rice, cereal, and pasta a day, which we did like a dutiful population. I mean,
that was a nice time. Let's be honest.
We did that
the good old days.
Dutiful citizens. And what happened to America? We exploded.
Hand me that sourdough. I need more.
That's right. Well, sourdough's not so bad, but the diabetes rates explode. I mean, we've tripled the obesity rates, and we've tripled the diabetes rates.
Yeah, you can see it.
I mean, this is not a genetic problem.
So you see those memes online where they show Americans in the 1900s, and they're all, first of all, they're well-dressed, and second of all, they're all slim. Yeah. All of them are slim. Yeah. It's very rare to see an obese person, even in the United States, 100 years ago. And
not even 100 years ago. I mean, African Americans in the 60s were healthier than white Americans. They were thinner, and they had less disease. Now, it's the opposite. When we saw COVID attack certain communities like New Orleans or Chicago, and there were 70% of the deaths were from 30% of the population, which was African American. And when you watch there's a movie called Amazing Grace with Aretha Franklin. It was filmed in 1970 in Oakland. There wasn't an overweight black person in the audience, and she wasn't overweight.
Wow.
And you go like, whoa, wow, that's crazy. And now 80% of African women are overweight, and obesity rates and heart disease rates and hypertension rates and kidney failure rates far exceed the
And you can tie this to ultra-processed foods and to the demonization of fat and elevation of sugar.
Yeah. And that was the problem. And now we've kind of reversed that trend. And I think, it's a big sort of tanker ship to move, but we have to do it because we're not only threatening our personal health, we're threatening our national security. 70% or 77% of recruits for the military are rejected because they're unfit to fight, because they're overweight or other reasons, because of their diet. You've got global competitiveness being challenged. We're like 30-something in math and reading in the world because kids can't learn in school because they're all doped up on these drugs and eating sugar and these chemicals in the food that are causing ADD, behavior issues, and all sorts of things.
And depression. I've heard you talk about this too. This is like everybody, you go to a therapist today, whether it's you or a child, the first thing I want to do is prescribe you something. They want to get your college-age kid hooked on a drug like that. Yeah. They're like, they've helped a lot of people. There's no explanation of, no one would ever ask, what are you eating? No one. It's true. I mean, it's the most amazing thing to me because it's so obvious. But as doctors, we learn that, disease really doesn't have anything to do with nutrition. If you go to your rheumatologist and autoimmune disease, they say, it's nothing to do with nutrition. If you go to a GI doctor, I mean, I'm like, what do you mean? Doctor.
I mean, think about it. You're putting pounds of this foreign stuff in your mouth every day. How does it not impact what's going on in your gut?
Right.
It's like, it's kind of crazy.
So, I mean, if you're feeling depressed or you're feeling anxiety, rule number one should probably be take a look at what you're eating. What are you eating?
Yeah. I mean, I have an incredible approach to one of my patients where I put them on a reset program. It's like hitting your body's factory reset button. So go back to your original factory settings.
Yeah.
And I call it the 10-day detox diet. I've written a book about it. There's a website where you can kind of go on 10daydetoxdiet.com and actually learn about it and do it if you want to. And what's amazing is that in 10 days, there's a 70% reduction in all symptoms from all diseases, which sounds crazy for me to say it, but I've done this so many times with so many people and tracked their symptoms and how they feel. And it allows them to see the connection between what they're eating and how they feel. Oh, I didn't know that this constant congestion I had was from what I was eating. I didn't know that this rash that I got on my body all the time I can't get rid of is from what I'm eating. I didn't know that my stomach issues are related to my sleep issues or my depression or my migraines or whatever it is. Food is generally the first place to look. And if you can clean the deck and take out the bad stuff and put in the good stuff, take out all the processed foods, all the sugar and starch, put in, lots of vegetables, good healthy, protein, lots of nuts and seeds, and get out all the ultra-processed foods, the body is so smart. It's like quickly changes.
Tariff wars, stubborn inflation. No wonder gold has been routinely hitting all-time highs. In volatile markets like the one we have now, don't sit on the sidelines with your head in the sand. You can take control and safeguard your savings. Aren't you thinking about that today? That's why so many Americans today are turning to Birch Gold Group. They've helped tens of thousands convert an existing IRA or 401k into one in physical gold. Is it time for you to hedge against economic instability or market instability with gold? To learn how to own physical gold in a tax-sheltered account, text MK to the number 989898. Birch Gold will send you a free, no-obligation info kit. Again, just text MK to the number 989898. With an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau and countless 5-star reviews, Birch Gold has helped many protect their savings with gold. It took us decades to get into the tangled mess we're trying to unpack right now. How long will it take to get out of it? And at what cost? Text MK to 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.